Unbelievable. How could he possibly kill it? I pleaded with him not to go. And he said he was on his way to give because she was splitting up with him. That he's next. He's going to kill himself because he couldn't live without her.
The first officer on the scene would later say he'd never heard a silence so loud. Two people sat motionless inside a pickup truck at a quiet rural intersection, seatbelts still on, morning coffee still in the cup holders, nothing disturbed except for the shattered glass and the impossible stillness. Whoever had done this was gone. Whoever these victims were, they hadn't even had time to react. Dispatch was still trying to make sense of the call that came in seconds earlier. A frantic witness shouting that someone had pulled up beside the truck, rolled down a window, and opened fire before speeding away.
Shot this guy in the truck. Shot somebody in a truck on Route 55, sir?
The witness didn't know who the victims were, didn't know their story, didn't know that this wasn't random. But someone did. Because at that exact same moment, 600 miles away in another state, a phone was ringing. And when a trembling mother answered, her son's voice came through, flat, emotionless, already lost. "Don't go to the house. You won't want to see what's there." She froze. He continued speaking, calmly, too calmly, telling her he was driving north, telling her he had taken care of everything. And then came the sentence that would set off a multistate emergency response. I messed up bad." She tried to keep him on the phone, but he hung up, and she was left sitting alone, heart racing, staring at a silent line. She didn't know who he had hurt. She didn't know if anyone was still alive. She didn't know that investigators in 2 states were already starting to piece together something far worse than a single crime. What she didn't know yet was that her son's life had been spiraling for months, and that the origin of this spiral began with a reunion, a moment meant to heal a family, not destroy it. If you're new to True Crime Watch HD, make sure you subscribe, because this case is one of the most disturbing journeys into obsession, identity, and control we've ever covered. Let's go back. Long before police cars swarmed that intersection, before emergency responders realized the victims were connected by blood and tragedy, a young woman named Katie Fusco was living a quiet life in New York. She had no enemies, no criminal history, nothing that would make anyone believe she'd ever end up at the center of a multistate manhunt. Katie was adopted as an infant, raised by Anthony and Kelly Fusco, a couple known in their community for kindness and resilience. She had a safe home, a stable childhood, and a personality that made people instantly comfortable around her. She loved art, stray animals, drawing comics, and making the people around her laugh. But as she approached adulthood, one question kept tugging at her. Who were the people who brought me into this world? She never resented her adoption. She wasn't searching out of anger. She was searching out of identity, a desire to understand her origins. Many adoptees feel the same pull at 18. It's natural, it's human. So one evening she opened her laptop and searched for her biological parents on Facebook. What she found seemed harmless. They looked like a regular family in Virginia. Her birth parents, Stephen and Alyssa, responded quickly. The messages grew longer, warmer, more emotional. They told her they had thought about her for years. They told her she had siblings. They told her they wanted to see her. And Katie, hopeful, excited, and eager to connect, wanted to see them too. Her adoptive parents were cautious but supportive. They understood the curiosity. They understood the need to know where you come from, so they helped her make arrangements. And on the day of the reunion, they sat in the car, hearts pounding, as Katie stepped out to meet the people who had created her. That first meeting felt emotional, awkward, overwhelming, and strangely perfect. There were tears. There were photos. There were long conversations about the past. No one caught the subtle tension. No one noticed the cracks. No one sensed that what looked like a beautiful moment would become the blueprint for disaster. Because inside that house, behind those smiles, was a relationship already fractured beyond repair. Alyssa and Steven's marriage had been strained for years. Their arguments didn't stop when Katie arrived. In fact, her presence seemed to amplify the instability. Still, Katie only saw what she wanted to see. A father she never knew. A mother rediscovering her. Sisters who looked like her. A family that felt like a missing piece of her life. And when she returned home to New York afterward, something had shifted. The questions she'd carried her entire life felt heavier now. Instead of satisfying her curiosity, the reunion deepened it. Within months, after countless phone calls and messages, Katie told her adoptive parents she wanted to spend more time with her biological family. She wanted to live with them for a while, just to understand herself, just to connect. It wasn't an easy decision for her adoptive parents, but they didn't want to push her away. She was 18, legally grown, and they wanted her to feel supported, not controlled. So in August 2016, Katie packed her belongings and headed to Virginia. From the outside, nothing about this seemed dangerous. Millions of adoptees reconnect with biological families every year. But the moment Katie stepped through that door again, she entered a house where emotional landmines were everywhere. Alyssa noticed it first. Steven's demeanor changed almost immediately. He became more talkative, more attentive, more involved in Katie's daily life than he had ever been with anyone. He altered his appearance, new clothes, new grooming habits, almost as if he were trying to look younger. He followed Katie from room to room, inserted himself into every conversation, and even began shutting Alyssa out entirely. His fixation grew quietly at first, then rapidly, then uncontrollably. But Katie didn't recognize the warning signs. She saw attention. She saw bonding. She saw a chance to finally know her father. And Steven saw something entirely different. As weeks turned to months, the dynamic inside the home shifted in a way that Alyssa described later as a darkness settling in the air. Arguments intensified. Doors slammed. Conversations whispered behind closed doors. And one night, an incident happened that made Alyssa's stomach drop. A moment subtle yet unmistakably wrong. A moment that made her realize something was happening between Steven and Katie that should never happen. A moment that would tear open a secret so disturbing that even seasoned detectives struggled to comprehend it later. And that moment was just the beginning. Alyssa didn't sleep the night she sensed something was wrong. She kept replaying every moment from the past weeks, Steven's sudden shift in behavior, the subtle but deliberate way he separated her from conversations, the change in his tone when he spoke to Katie. There was something predatory in it, something she had felt before but had convinced herself she'd imagined. But the moment she saw Steven stepping out of Katie's bedroom one morning, quietly, casually, as if he belonged there, her stomach dropped. The air in the hallway felt colder, heavier. She watched him walk away, saw the look in his eyes, saw the ease with which he closed the door behind him. And for the first time in years, she felt the exact fear she felt when her children were infants and Steven's temper shook the walls of their home. She confronted him that afternoon, and instead of denying anything or reacting with embarrassment or guilt, he snapped, lashing out with anger that seemed disproportionate, almost rehearsed. He accused her of jealousy. He told her she was imagining things. He turned the confrontation into an attack. Katie, confused and caught in the middle, defended him. She didn't understand the tension. She didn't know the history. She didn't see what Alyssa saw. And that was when Alyssa realized the truth. Steven had already worked his way into Katie's trust in a way that left little room for her voice. Days later, the family fractured completely. Alyssa packed her things, took her 2 younger daughters and left the home behind. She thought distance would fix everything. She thought space would allow Katie to think clearly. She believed, or at least hoped, that Katie would eventually see the truth. But Stephen thrived in the silence Alyssa left behind. With Alyssa gone, the environment shifted from tense to something far more dangerous. The isolation deepened. Stephen now had unrestricted access to Katie, and his attention, which had already become unnervingly intense, grew to a level that overwhelmed common sense. The subtle dependency he had been building started to take shape. He told Katie she was special. He told her she understood him in a way no one else ever had. He told her the world was against them. He told her things that blurred the lines of identity, loyalty, and belonging. When you're 18, trying to understand who you are, trying to feel connected after years of wondering about your origins, flattery can feel like truth, especially when it comes from someone who should have been a protector, not a manipulator. Meanwhile, small details hinted to outsiders that something was off. Stephen suddenly changed the way he dressed, tighter shirts, new jeans, a different hairstyle. He tried to look younger. He tried to imitate the very age group Katie belonged to. Neighbors noticed the shift. Friends noticed the shift, but no one knew the context. What looked like a man trying to reinvent himself was really a man descending into something far more twisted. Weeks turned into months, and the relationship between Stephen and Katie entered a phase that even seasoned detectives later struggled to describe. It wasn't a sudden shift. It was a gradual crossing of lines, each one more disturbing than the last. And then came the moment that removed any doubt. Alyssa received a phone call from her daughters after a weekend visit at Stephen's. They were confused, unsettled, trying to make sense of something they overheard and witnessed. Their words were fragmented and innocent, but deeply alarming. They asked why Katie was being called something other than sister. They asked why their father said strange things about her. They asked questions no child should ever have to ask. Alyssa's heart stopped. She searched their bags after they returned home. And that's when she found it. A journal entry written in the messy handwriting of an 11-year-old, describing something so horrifying she dropped the notebook. The journal didn't just confirm her fear, it shattered her. She grabbed her phone and called Stephen immediately, shaking with fury, disgust, and disbelief. She demanded answers, and his response was chillingly simple, delivered with no shame, no hesitation, no remorse. "I thought you knew, we're in love." Those words would haunt Alyssa forever. She hung up and did the only thing a mother could do. She called police. But the investigation that followed wasn't immediate. The legal system struggled with the complexity of what they were facing. Because Katie was over 18, the law couldn't treat her as a minor, despite the fact that psychologically, emotionally, and historically, she was dealing with a level of grooming that had begun years before she was even aware of it. Stephen knew this. He knew exactly how to exploit the gaps in the system. He knew how to turn confusion into excuses, excuses into delay, delay into opportunity. That opportunity came quickly. Unable to stop them, unable to force charges yet, authorities could only watch as Stephen and Katie packed their belongings and left Virginia. They moved to North Carolina, settling into a quiet suburban neighborhood where no one knew their past. From the outside, they looked like a typical couple starting fresh. From the inside, something far more disturbing had taken root. It was around this time that Katie's adoptive parents realized something was deeply wrong. Their daughter's calls became shorter. Her tone changed. Her distance grew. Her once bright, playful personality dimmed into something quieter, heavier. They didn't know why. They didn't know what had happened. They only knew she wasn't the same. Then the announcement came. Katie was pregnant. To her adoptive parents, the shock was indescribable, but they didn't know who the father was. They didn't know what was unfolding behind closed doors, and by the time the truth reached them, the damage had already been done. Katie was living in a world built by Stephen, emotionally dependent, isolated, manipulated, and controlled. And Stephen believed Nothing could tear down what he had constructed. But he was wrong. Within months, the truth finally reached police, and when it did, the law caught up to them. Authorities moved in, and Stephen and Katie were arrested on charges relating to their relationship. Court orders were put in place forbidding contact. Katie was sent back to New York. Stephen remained alone, waiting for a hearing. And for the first time since she stepped into his home, Katie had space, real space to think. Distance has a way of breaking illusions. And once she was out of his reach, she began to see everything differently. For Stephen, that shift wasn't just painful. It was catastrophic. Because nothing threatened his world more than Katie realizing she needed to escape it. And it was that realization, simple, brave, and long overdue, that pushed him toward a darkness no one could have predicted. The distance between them changed everything. For the first time since reconnecting with her biological parents, Katie was out of Stephen's reach. She was back in New York, surrounded by the family that had raised her, the people who truly loved her, the environment where she had once been whole. And that shift, quiet but powerful, began to break the psychological grip Stephen had held over her. Her adoptive parents saw their daughter coming back to life piece by piece. The way she walked changed. The heaviness in her voice lightened. She began drawing again, sketching small scenes in the corners of notebooks like she used to. She talked more, laughed more, and slowly began to rediscover who she was before Stephen pulled her into his world. But Stephen wasn't rediscovering anything. He was unraveling. Alone in North Carolina, barred from contacting Katie, stripped of control, and watching the illusion he built collapse, he spiraled into isolation. His mother noticed it first. The sudden silence. The way he stayed inside for days. The phone calls filled with anger one moment and tears the next. She tried to intervene, but obsession doesn't fade with logic. It festers. It grows. It consumes. And for Stephen, everything now centered around one belief. If he couldn't have control, he had nothing. Meanwhile, Katie began opening up in ways she hadn't before. In therapy sessions, in late-night conversations with her adoptive parents, she started unpacking the manipulation she hadn't recognized while living with Stephen. She began to see how he had twisted her worldview, isolated her from Alyssa, and turned curiosity into dependency. She realized the version of family he offered wasn't love, it was ownership. And for the first time, she saw herself not as Stephen's creation, but as Stephen's victim. With that clarity came the most important step she would ever take. She decided she wanted out completely. Her adoptive parents supported her, investigators supported her, counselors supported her, and eventually she made the call Stephen had feared more than anything. A simple call, a few sentences, but to him, it was a declaration that everything he built was over. She told him she was leaving the relationship for good. She told him she was moving forward with her life. She told him she wanted a divorce. And she told him she would not return to him, emotionally or physically. On the other end of the line, Stephen didn't argue. He didn't fight. He didn't beg. He went silent. It was the kind of silence that isn't acceptance but calculation. And behind that silence, something snapped. Hours turned into a day and the warning signs intensified. Stephen stopped eating. He stopped answering calls from his own attorney. He stopped checking on the one person he still had access to, his infant son, Bennett, who was being cared for by Stephen's mother under court order. Stephen sat alone in the dark, replaying Katie's words again and again until they no longer sounded like rejection, but betrayal. In his mind, the narrative twisted into something far more dangerous. The court orders, the distance, the separation, the truth Katie was finally seeing. He believed someone had taken her from him, and he believed he needed to fix it. His mother had no idea that when Stephen arrived asking to pick up Bennett, he wasn't planning to deliver the baby to Katie. He wasn't planning to reconcile anything. He wasn't planning to face the court system. His eyes were unfocused. His voice was monotone. There was a stillness about him that she couldn't place, something cold, something resolved. She handed him the child because she trusted him as a father. She never imagined she had just handed him a goodbye. That night, while the rest of the neighborhood slept, Stephen made a decision that would mark the first step of a tragedy spanning 3 states. And by morning, the house he left behind carried a silence so heavy that anyone who stepped inside could feel the darkness pressed into the walls. What happened inside that home would later be confirmed by investigators, but the exact details remain sealed because of the child's age. What is known is that Stephen carried out an act no parent should ever be capable of, an act that revealed just how far his obsession had overtaken his humanity. When he called his mother hours later, she recognized immediately that something terrible had happened. She tried to deny it. She tried to talk to him. She tried to reason with him, but he spoke with the calmness of someone who believed there was no turning back. "Don't go to the house." It was the only hint he gave before he said he was driving to New York. At the same moment Stephen was heading north, Katie and her adoptive father, Anthony, were beginning their morning. They got into their pickup truck, ready for a routine trip. Neither of them knew that Stephen had been sitting in his vehicle nearby, watching them. Neither knew he had driven all night. Neither knew his mind had settled into a chilling clarity where every action felt justified. As they pulled away from their home, Stephen followed. The drive was ordinary at first. Quiet roads, early sunlight, the familiar route taken countless times. But behind them, closing in with every mile, was someone who no longer saw them as family, but as the reason his world had collapsed. Witnesses would later describe the same scene from different angles: a vehicle pulling up beside a truck at a stop sign, a window rolling down, a motion swift and deliberate. And then the sound, a sound that stopped conversations, froze pedestrians, and shattered any illusion that this was random. By the time help arrived, there was nothing anyone could do, and Stephen was already gone. When police in North Carolina entered the home Stephen had left behind, the silence inside was suffocating. The discovery they made tied the nightmare together. 3 lives were gone, 3 families shattered, and the motive was as chilling as the acts themselves. A lethal mixture of obsession, control, and a mind that had crossed every forbidden boundary. The case shook investigators. It shook communities. It shook families who had never imagined that a reunion meant to bring healing could spiral into something so unimaginable. And today, it stands as one of the most disturbing examples of manipulation, grooming, and the catastrophic danger of unchecked control. Stories like this raise questions none of us want to ask, but we must. How does a person hide darkness for so long? How does manipulation disguise itself as affection? How does a reunion meant to restore identity end in irreversible damage? And what could have been done sooner? I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think was the biggest turning point in this case? Where do you believe the system failed Katie the most? Let me know down in the comments. If this deep dive gave you clarity, insight, or a new perspective, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to True Crime Watch HD. We investigate cases like this with depth, empathy, and a commitment to telling these stories the way they deserve to be told. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and take care of each other.